As we look to the Senate races tonight, we got to remember that there's a lot at stake here as well. It's not only just the presidency and the House of Representatives tonight. The Senate, very important as the Democrats look to try and take all three of these important chambers here. So let's look at this United States Senate map. And right now, with the 270 to win graphic, we got Democrats 48, Republicans 46. Right now, obviously, Republicans controlling the U.S. Senate as of right now, but that could change after tonight in a big way. So let's look at some of these important races right now. Let's look at Arizona. Martha McSally versus Mark Kelly. Martha McSally, the Republican incumbent. She's in trouble here. I think this is going to go to Mark Kelly. McSally's polled 3 to 5 points behind Kelly for really the majority of the election cycle. A couple polls as of late had got her a little closer, but with all the early voting, and that's going to be a theme tonight. There's going to be a lot of early voting in the presidency. There's going to be a lot of early voting here in the Senate. And we got to say that in Arizona, a lot of Republicans angry at Donald Trump for his feelings towards John McCain in the latter years of his life. That's going to go down the ballot. And I think that Martha McSally, a pretty unpopular Republican, is going to lose in Arizona. So that's another big pickup for Arizona. I should also mention before we continue here that some states we already have filled in that Democrats would argue about. South Carolina, Jamie Harrison has tried to pull close to Lindsey Graham in recent weeks. Lindsey Graham has had a really big fight that was not expected. Lindsey Graham, though, still polling ahead of Harrison, going to keep it red because it really would be a huge upset, but it is something that Democrats will keep an eye on, kind of the same way they kept an eye on the Ted Cruz, Beto O'Rourke race a few years ago. Also in Alabama of interest, Tommy Tuberville running for what is Doug Jones's seat right now, who defeated Roy Moore a couple years ago to take Jeff Sessions' seat, and Doug Jones does not look like he is in a good shape here. Tuberville constantly polling 10 to 15 points ahead of Doug Jones. We should also point out that an Auburn University Montgomery poll was taken of the primary between Sessions and Tommy Tuberville, and it was really accurate. It had about a 20-point Tuberville victory. It has Tuberville plus 12. Really no reason to think that Doug Jones is going to pull it out in Alabama. So wanted to clear the air on a couple of those. Let's look at Montana now. Montana, a very close one. You don't really think of Montana. It does not have a big electoral pool. But in Montana, I'm going to give this to Steve Daines, the Republican incumbent. Steve Bullock is running against Daines. Bullock was the governor of Montana, very popular Democrat. That state, while it's constantly red on the presidential level, has had a tendency to be quite purple in Senate races. John Tester is currently the other senator from Montana. He is a Democrat. And as I just mentioned, Bullock was the governor of Montana. He was a Democrat. So Montana is closer than you think at down ballot, but I think Steve Daines pulls this out. It's going to be one of the really close ones, 1 or 2 points. We've already seen Montana turnout has already eclipsed 100% early voting of what it did in the entire 2016 election. So anybody that shows up to the polls today will be adding on to the already record turnout in Montana. Let's also look at Georgia, the state right next door. Very close races here. David Perdue, John Ossoff. I'm going to actually leave this one blank. I think this is going to go to a runoff. You have to get 50% in Georgia in the Senate battle. If there are more than 2 people on the ballot, there is a third party on the ballot. And the race between David Perdue, the Republican incumbent, versus John Ossoff, incredibly close. Too close to call. Going to be a point or so either way, and ultimately I don't think you're going to have a conclusion to that battle on this election night. You look at the special election, not going to fill that one in either for right now. This is Raphael Warnock, Reverend Raphael Warnock, the Democrat, running against the Republican incumbent Kelly Loeffler in a primary. You also have a couple more people down the ballot that are going to take votes away. And ultimately this runoff or this special election will be headed to a runoff as well, probably between Loeffler and Warnock. Whatever the case, Raphael Warnock will win the vote total tonight. He's going to probably get 35-40%. Won't get that 50% number, but he will probably win this by 10 or 15 points. I expect Kelly Loeffler to come out in second, the Republican incumbent, and polls show that Warnock leads, whether it's whoever the other Republican is, Warner, Loeffler, whoever, leads by 5 to 10 points in a head-to-head matchup right now. So this seat looks pretty good shape for Raphael Warnock as of tonight, election night, but we will see as we go forward if that race tightens once the Republicans find the challenger to Raphael Warnock, and it will probably be Republican incumbent Kelly Loeffler. Looking at North Carolina, really no good evidence right here to suggest that Tom Tillis, another Republican incumbent, the theme of the night, Republican incumbents in trouble in close swing states. No evidence to suggest that Tom Tillis is going to be able to hold this seat in North Carolina. He was involved in a scandal in early March. It's some insider training where looked like some stocks were sold off, benefiting him during the pandemic. Kelly Loeffler swept up in that as well in Georgia. North Carolina is not liking that. So North Carolina is going to be a very key state. The Democrats feel really good about it. They have a very popular Democrat governor, Roy Cooper, in North Carolina. And so it appears that maybe down the ballot, you could have Cooper reelected as governor, the Democrat. You could have Tom Tillis, the Republican, lose his seat to Cal Cunningham, a Democrat. And then you could obviously at the presidential level have Joe Biden defeat Donald Trump in the state that Trump carried in 2016. So North Carolina is looking like a pretty good bet for the Democrats as we count the votes tonight. We'll also go to Iowa. So this is the state, Joni Ernst, the Republican incumbent. Once again, Teresa Greenfield, Democrat challenger. This has been wavering, 50-50. You can make an argument for Ernst. The last couple of polls have been much more favorable to her. You can make an argument for Greenfield. She was up 4 to 5 points in polls a couple of weeks ago. It's 50-50, as a lot of these races are. I'm going to edge towards Ernst. The momentum was for Greenfield a couple of weeks ago. Like I said, Ernst in the last couple of polls has been up. The Des Moines Register has done a poll. One of those that had Greenfield up 4 or 5 points had Ernst up 2 or 3 points in the last poll a couple of days ago. So Ernst has clearly gotten momentum back. I think it will be enough. So I will take Joni Ernst in Iowa there. And I should also mention here, so we got 2 seats blank, and they're also in Georgia. That main race up there between Sarah Gideon, and Susan Collins, that's another Republican incumbent in danger of losing a seat. I think that Collins will probably lose that seat. We already had it filled in blue. It is close enough to not be sure. Collins will have a chance, but considering Maine's 2nd district, a district that is needed for Republicans at times, it is an important electoral vote. And when you have a close election, sometimes swings Republican, sometimes Democrat. It is projected to be in Joe Biden's favor again tonight. So really statewide, not looking good for Republicans in Maine. That's why we already have Gideon there ahead of Susan Collins. So you have a 50-48 race as you look at the Georgia elections. And to be quite frank, it might not matter, because if it's 50-50, the Vice President of the United States of America breaks ties in the Senate. If Joe Biden wins, that'll be Kamala Harris. If Donald Trump wins, it will still be Mike Pence. So look, Democrats will feel good about this, 50-48, with Georgia's elections looking at least pretty favorable in one of them. And it could be any of them. It could be Iowa that could swing towards Teresa Greenfield and make that 51-48 right there, or 51-47 with 2 empty seats in Georgia. So really there's a lot of scenarios that feel good for Democrats. A scenario for Republicans keeping the Senate, I don't know if it's very plausible right now. You would have to have Iowa red. You'd have to swing either North Carolina or Arizona. You'd have to win this Georgia seat. And look, if you split the Georgia ticket, I mean, it's still 50-50. You have to find an Arizona, or you have to find a Maine. It's really not a good scenario for Republicans here on election night. Looking very strong are the Democrats statewide. I'll get it back to what we projected it to be coming into the night. So right now, that's kind of what we are looking at as far as states that are in trouble for Republicans. And like I said, the theme of the night is Republican incumbents having trouble hanging on to their seats against really a nation that is favoring a lot of Democrats after these 4 years of Donald Trump as presidency. So we'll count the votes tonight, as we always do, and we'll see who comes in on top here in the United States Senate.